What's cracking, gang? It's T Nasty, and I'm back with another banger for you guys. So with UFC 310 behind us, that is a wrap on the pay-per-view schedule for the UFC in 2024. We have been witness to some fucking amazing, fantastic, incredible cards that just left us in awe of the sport. Then there have also been a couple pay-per-views that were just disrespectful to the sport of mixed martial arts, a disgrace to the art of combat. But it is December, and I'm here to give you guys all that juicy end-of-year content, beginning with ranking every UFC pay-per-view that happened in the year of 2024. I'm going to be pumping out daily vids until the end of the year, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a video. Now before we get into the ranking, the way this is going to work is we have the F tier for the absolute trash, disgusting, and most disrespectful cards of the year. Then we have the S tier for those pay-per-view cards that just brought a tear to my eye, the most breathtaking cards just like my content. And then the A, B, and C tiers for everything in between. I will be ranking these events from worst to best in order, so we're going to start out with the filth and then proceed into the best of the best. But with all that being said, let's get right into it. Starting with the lowest of the low at the bottom of F tier, we have the absolute abomination that was UFC 297. Ironic that the start of the year had this disgrace. It said a lot about what was to come in 2024, but we had my biggest op, Neil Magny, actually picking up a win. This was my MMA 9/11. He fraud-checked Mike Malott, who is an absolute clown and should be cut. They both should. But if Neil Magny is winning, you know it's going to be rough. Then in the co-main event, we had the absolute worst thing I've ever witnessed in my entire life with Raquel Pennington versus Mayra Bueno Silva. This fight was a slap in the face to MMA fans. Absolutely disgraceful, boring, sport-killing fight. Enough said. And in the main event, we had Dricus the Chad dethroning crybaby Sean Strickland. This was nice to see, but the fight was just okay. People at the time were saying it was good, but they were absolutely tripping. It only felt good because the rest of the card was trash. I did love to see Sean Strickland lose. That was added to the hate watch list for sure, but it wasn't enough to save this card. Just overall a massive L of a pay-per-view. Next up, still in the F tier, we have UFC 302. It pains me to say this for a Dustin Poirier card, but aside from this main event, the whole card was awful. Sean Strickland once again in the co-main event actually won this time against Paulo Costa in a split decision, go figure. But this time it was even worse. This fight was horrible. Strickland did his usual thing of acting like he was going to war and going to bleed for us. Here's the thing, you guys. But he proceeded to sneak it up. He really stunk up this year, and the main event was an epic fight, one of the best of the year. It was definitely sad to see my boy Dustin lose though. I couldn't handle that. Despite how good it wasn't enough to save this card. I didn't even remember any of these other fights, so that just says a lot. It was overall not a memorable card, a lot of boring fights, not many finishes, and just overall an F tier card for sure. Now moving up to the C tier, we start with UFC 307. Now this card did have an epic main event with Khalil Roundtree versus Alex Pereira. You guys know I love Chadlicks, but the rest of the card was just okay. The co-main event was kind of bad. Better than the first Pennington fight this year though. Pena won a robbery decision and got her belt back. It was a fight that happened for sure. Kayla Harrison picked up a good win, but the fight was not great. I'm just down bad because I lost my bet really. Of course, Mario Batista committed a hate crime against Jose Aldo. I don't even want to talk about that, it's going to piss me off. But it was all saved with that main event. It was just epic. Khalil was actually in the fight and going toe-to-toe with Alex before the insane finish. It wasn't enough to bring it to the upper tiers though, but it was good enough to make this a C tier card. Now, in the C tier as well is UFC 301. This Brazil pay-per-view was headlined by Alex Pantoja versus Steve Erceg and Jose Aldo versus Jonathan Martinez. The card was pretty good, but it could have been better with a Poatan main event. Either way, it was still entertaining. We had some sweet moments like Anthony Smith fraud-checking Vitor Petrino. I love to hate on Anthony, but it was cool to see him win with a ghillie of all things. Then the King of Rio, Jose Aldo, making his return with another win in Brazil. It was a good fight and a great performance by Aldo. And the main event was a war between Pantoja and Erceg. I think Steve could have beat Pantoja. This fight was close and they made it a really good fight. The card was just overall pretty solid, not bad for sure. I was watching this fight on my phone during my boy's bachelor party. You already know I was glued to the phone for that main event, so I think it deserves a spot at the top of the C tier. Now on to the B tier, we have 3 fights this time, starting with UFC 309. This card was pretty trash on paper, but ultimately delivered for its expectations. We had some cool moments like my boy Mauricio Rufy beating James Muffintop's ass. We had Bo Nickel put up a stinker against Paul Craig, which stunk things up a bit, but he keeps climbing. Oliveira and Chandler put on a banger in the co-main event. We love to see a Charles do Bronx win. And the main event, although I despise John Jones, he had a sick finish over Stipe with that spinning back kick. It overall was a pretty good main card that ended up being way better than expected, so it's going in the B tier. Next up is UFC 303. This one was supposed to be way better originally, at least on paper. We lost out on the McGregor vs. Chandler fight, which was disappointing, but we ended up with a Poatan title defense, which was almost the next best thing. Ian Ferry stunk it up against MVP for sure. That fight was an abomination, but the co-main event was pretty good. Diego Lopez took on Dan Ige on damn near hours notice, and it was a pretty good fight. How can you not love Diego Lopez? He had an amazing year. And then the main event was just absolutely carried with Alex Pereira picking up another KO over Yuri, this time by a head kick. Who doesn't love a good head kick KO? The fight was really good for as long as it lasted and topped off a very solid card. It goes in the B tier. Then at the top of the B tier, we have UFC 310. This one just happened, and it was just a really good card from top to bottom. The prelims were low-key better, but the main card was still solid. Pantoja headlined once again, taking on Kai Asakura. He picked up a sweet submission win after a crazy first round. In the co-main event, we had Ian Gary actually put up a good fight, losing to Shavkat Rakhmonov. This was a lot better than some of Ian's other fights, and was cool to see. We also had some sweet KOs with Doo Ho Choi beating up Nate the Train, and Bryce Mitchell getting a satisfying KO over Kron Gracie. I wish we could have gotten that Bilal Muhammad title defense, but the card ended up being really good overall. Now we move on to the good stuff. We have 5 events in the A tier. We begin with UFC 298. This was an awesome pay-per-view, capped off with the downfall of Alex Volkanovski. We had great fights with Robert Whittaker vs. Paulo Costa, Merab vs. Henry Cejudo, and Anthony Hernandez vs. Roman Kopylov. Ian Gary stunk it up once again against Jeff Neal, but the main event was an epic moment. The downfall of Volk, but the rise of Ilia Topuria. Ilia absolutely slumped Alex with an amazing KO and became the champion. That dude is just on another level, and it was crazy to see him do Volk like that. UFC 298 was a fantastic pay-per-view and absolutely redeemed the clownery of UFC 297. It absolutely belongs in the A tier. Next up is UFC 306. While the fights alone were not top tier, the event itself was a spectacle. Witnessing the Sphere was just an experience. If you didn't watch, you absolutely missed out. That shit was crazy. It was kind of underwhelming for the prelims, but once the main card started, it turned into something epic. The visuals were just mind-blowing. Pause. If you haven't seen it, just go watch and you'll know what I mean. But the fights were solid too. Ode Osborne vs. Ronaldo Rodriguez was entertaining. Zell Huber vs. Rybovics was one of the fights of the year. That shit was insane. Brian Ortega vs. Diego Lopez was a really good scrap. We got to see another awesome Diego Lopez performance. The co-main stunk it up for sure, but Sean vs. Merab was a solid main event. I'm not salty anymore, but I am still sad that Sean lost, but it was a good title win for Merab. Overall, just a crazy event with good fights and an outstanding visual experience. It is without a doubt an A-tier event. Moving on, we have UFC 305. Back down under in Australia, we paid witness to a great card. Carlos Prates put his name on the map with a crazy KO over Li Jingliang, the first man to KO the Leech. Taco Bell Tuivasa got his ass beat once again. Dan Hooker derailed Gamrot in what ended up being a crazy banger. Kai Kara France slept Steve Erseg in the co-main event, and then we witnessed justice when the Chad Dricus Duplessis dog-walked Adesanya and finished it. The fight was really entertaining for as long as it lasted as well. Just a super memorable card with great fights, awesome KOs, and an awesome moment in the main event. This one is absolutely worth a rewatch and is up there in the A tier. Now also in the A tier, we have UFC 304. One of the best moments of the year in the main event with my boy Bilal Remember the Name Muhammad dominating Leon Edwards to finally become champion. The fight was awesome and was a great performance by Bilal. Also on the card, we had Paddy Pimblett subbing Bobby King Green with a crazy triangle armbar. This fight was crazy for only lasting one round. Then we had Tommy Aspinall doing it again with another quick finish over Curtis Blades, finally getting his revenge and defending the interim title. Just a crazy entertaining card, albeit top heavy. I'm mostly ignoring the prelims for this ranking, but this card had really good prelims as well. It was a super memorable event for me and goes high in the A tier for my rankings. Then at top of A tier, we have another card headlined by one of my boys. In the main event, Sugar Sean O'Malley put a beating on Cheeto Vera, avenging his fluke loss. The fight was really entertaining, with Cheeto having a few moments, but Sean just whooped him in a very dominating performance. We also had another one of my boys, Dustin Poirier, sleeping Benoit Saint Denis. It was a really good fight for as long as it lasted. Dustin was jumping the ghillie many times, then eventually just said fuck it and banged till he cracked BSD. Really awesome co-main. We also had another one of my boys, Jack Della Maddalena, knocking out Gilbert Burns with a crazy knee. An epic comeback win. He was about to lose before that round 3 KO. I'm sure you guys are seeing the pattern here. So many of my favorite fighters picked up wins on this card. It was super memorable for me and just one of the best cards this year objectively. Absolutely going to the top of the A tier on my list. Now for the cream of the crop, the most pristine, awe-inspiring pay-per-views of the year, the S tier. We have 2 more cards left, and I'm sure you guys can deduce what they are, but we start with UFC 308. The Abu Dhabi cards are usually good, and this one blew that reputation out of the water. An absolutely awesome card from beginning to end. The prelims were fantastic, capped off one of the fights of the year in Orlbai vs. Rebecki. Then the main card had great fights with Murphy vs. Ige and Big Onk vs. Rakic. We had one of the KOs of the year, Shar Magomedov slumping Petrosian with a double spinning back fist. Incredible. Khamzat Chimaev breaking Robert Whittaker's face. An amazing submission win for Khamzat, making quick work of Whittaker. Next fight is for the title. And in the main event, man, Ilia Topuria just put on one of the best performances of all time. Knocking out Max Holloway is unprecedented and was just amazing. As much as I love Max and was sad to see him finally get KO'd, it was cool to see Ilia do that. It really feels like we were witnessing greatness with this dude. This card was just awesome. So many good fights and finishes, huge moments, and an epic one in the main event as well. This pay-per-view is obviously S tier and it cannot be argued. Now, at the top of the S tier, the best card of the year, the best card ever, UFC 300. This was a UFC supercard, absolutely chef's kiss matchmaking. The only one that didn't belong was Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage, but that fight wasn't boring. Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan, Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje, Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan, Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. I mean, it speaks for itself. Holloway Gaethje alone was one of the best fights of the year and one of the best KOs of all time. The boys were going absolutely nuts for that one. Weili versus Yan was a war. Poatan embarrassed Jamal Hill by KOing him and then emoting on him. Just an amazing pay-per-view card. Even the prelims were crazy. They could have been a Fight Night main card on their own. It was literally built to be an insane card for the 300th event, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it was outstanding, absolutely breathtaking, and brought a tear to my eye. So that's the tier list, boys. Main takeaways: Sean Strickland and Ian Gary stunk the year up, and Alex Pereira carried. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments what events you guys would put in the S tier. As you know, my takes are 100% factual and correct, so if you disagree with my rankings, you're wrong. But go ahead and let me know anyway. If you enjoyed this vid, don't forget to drop a like, leave a comment, hit that subscribe button, share this shit on Facebook, ring the notification bell, become a member, create a second account, and then repeat those steps for me. As always, if you aren't doing those things, you're just a straight up casual with all due respect. If you want to be a test-maxed, hardcore MMA fan like myself, you must be subscribed to this channel. I apologize for the absence, gang, but I'm back. I'm going to be pumping out daily vids until the end of the year, like I said. Got a lot of end of year content for you guys. I'm giving you the 10 days of Christmas to make up for it. So make sure to stay tuned and ready. Carve out 15 minutes of your time to pay attention to the facts I'll be spitting for you. We are on the road to 250 subscribers, gang. Let's hit that before the end of the year. When I hit that goal, I will be doing a giveaway. So make sure to absolutely smash that subscribe button if you want a chance to be one of the lucky winners. Most people don't even realize they haven't subscribed. So go check that button and click it if you haven't. It helps me out a lot. But with all that being said, I'm out. Take it easy, gang.